Welcome back to my YouTube channel, where we take ordinary stories and uncover the extraordinary truths hidden just beneath the surface. If you've been with us for a while, you already know that some of the rarest treasures are hiding in plain sight, waiting to rewrite history. And today, we are diving deep into a tale unlike any other. It's about a coin, yes, a quarter, but not just any quarter. This is the legendary 1986 D quarter dollar that would later be revealed as one of the most mysterious, valuable, and mind-boggling discoveries ever made in the world of numismatics. A coin that turned up in a way no one could have predicted, and whose journey would stretch across decades, linking broken families, lost fortunes, and one nearly forgotten act of genius that would change everything. And the most stunning part? This tiny piece of metal, only 24.26 millimeters across, was eventually appraised at $419 million, securing its place in the annals of history as the most expensive quarter to ever exist. Our story begins not in a vault or at a collector's showcase, but on a dusty roadside in the outskirts of Billings, Montana in the late spring of 1997. An elderly man named Clyde Harris was walking home from the local general store, pushing his rusted bicycle beside him, his basket filled with a bag of flour, canned peaches, and a worn-out paperback mystery novel he'd picked up for a quarter. He stopped at a roadside vending machine to grab a soda, dropped in a few coins, and 1 quarter jammed the slot. Annoyed, he tried wiggling the coin free, but it wouldn't budge. Moments later, he gave the machine a swift kick, dislodging not only his soda but also the coin that had refused to drop. It popped out and landed beside his boot. Something about the coin caught his eye. It looked slightly different. The edge wasn't quite the same, almost as if it hadn't worn down like the others. Clyde picked it up, turned it over, and noticed the date, 1986. Minted in Denver. D for Denver. A common enough coin, sure, but it had a strange gleam, a particular luster that made him pocket it instead of tossing it back into circulation. For nearly 2 decades, that coin sat in an old tobacco tin beneath the floorboards of Clyde's cottage. He would bring it out occasionally, compare it to others, puzzled by its shine, by its perfect ridges and slightly sharper detail. At some point in 2003, Clyde passed away in his sleep. A modest funeral followed, and his belongings were mostly boxed up or discarded, save for a few trinkets his niece, Emily Harris, took home to Denver with her. She brought along that tobacco tin, unaware of its contents or significance. Life was busy and unforgiving, divorces, layoffs, raising kids, so the tin remained untouched in her attic for years. Fast forward to 2016. Emily's son, Tyler, then a sophomore in college and a bit of a coin hobbyist on the side, was rummaging through old boxes in search of items for a garage sale when he found the tobacco tin. Inside, he found the coin. His breath caught slightly. He noticed right away the quarter didn't feel like the others he had collected. It was heavier. Just barely, but enough for someone trained in coin collecting to notice. The details on Washington's face were sharper, his jaw more chiseled. Even the eagle on the reverse side looked unusually crisp. And then he spotted something even stranger. The word Liberty seemed ever so slightly off-center, like it had been struck twice with 2 different dies. A double die error? Maybe. But more compelling was the edge. It bore a faint micro-engraving, one he could only see under his jeweller's loupe. It read, Test Strike, 86D, Alloy Shift. Tyler's hands trembled. He had read about test strikes before, but the US Mint was notorious for destroying nearly all of them. How could one have escaped destruction? He did what any collector would do. He took it to his coin professor and part-time appraiser, Dr. Leonard Ousley, who had been collecting and researching US coins for nearly 40 years. Ousley took one look at the coin, examined it under high magnification, and his demeanor changed entirely. He cancelled his next class. Then he shut the office door. Ousley explained that in 1986, the Denver Mint had experimented with a new alloy blend for the quarter, one intended to be more resistant to environmental corrosion and also more cost-effective. However, after a string of internal failures, including inconsistent weight and conductivity issues affecting vending machine recognition, the project was scrapped. The few test coins minted were supposed to be melted down, with the exception of 3 which were archived under lock and key at the Bureau of Engraving and Printing for record purposes only. Yet, somehow, a 4th had escaped. This was that coin. The professor reached out to the Smithsonian's National Numismatic Collection. Quiet meetings ensued. Experts were flown in. The coin was analyzed, reanalyzed, subjected to spectral composition tests, even X-rayed. The results were conclusive. The coin's core contained a trace alloy known as trimancium steel, a lightweight, corrosion-resistant blend developed briefly for U.S. military use in aerospace engineering. The alloy had only been used in a classified satellite project that was scrapped in early 1986, around the same time the Mint had experimented with blending metals to reduce minting costs. The connection was almost too surreal. Somehow, through a convoluted trail involving surplus military materials, an experimental batch of metal blanks ended up in Denver, where they were briefly used in a handful of test strike quarters. The implications were enormous. This was not just a rare minting anomaly, it was a coin that straddled 2 realms: finance and defense, secrecy and legality. The news, once leaked to a confidential circle of elite collectors, caused ripples no one could have anticipated. Bidding began discreetly, with collectors offering 7 figures, then 8. It escalated quickly. Tyler was whisked away under legal advisement. A private auction was arranged in Geneva, Switzerland. No names were listed, only numbered paddles. But among those bidders were tech billionaires, Middle Eastern royalty, and anonymous historical preservation societies. The final bid was placed by an undisclosed buyer represented by the Northbridge Acquisition Trust. The winning offer, $419 million. The story did not end there, because the sale of the coin prompted investigations, government inquiries, and a series of lawsuits. The Denver Mint was forced to release documentation previously locked under national security clauses. As it turned out, a rogue employee had been tasked with disposing of the experimental blanks but had taken home a handful instead. Some he sold as scrap. Others were lost. The quarter in question had been minted using one of these blanks in a single shift when standard metal sheets ran short and the press line supervisor decided to keep production moving. That quarter, due to its near-perfect strike and accidental use of the trimancium alloy, was the only known surviving piece of that exact composition. In the months following the sale, Tyler dropped out of college. Not because he wanted to, but because the sheer media frenzy around the event made it impossible for him to attend classes. Tabloids dubbed him the quarter millionaire, even though he was technically worth far more. He went on to establish a private coin research foundation, investing heavily into exploring lost and undiscovered mint records. Meanwhile, the coin remained shrouded in mystery, occasionally surfacing in private showings for elite audiences, often with more security than a diplomatic summit. But what truly sets this story apart isn't just the astronomical price tag, or even the secrecy that surrounded its creation. It's the sheer randomness of its journey. A coin, struck by accident during a routine shift, forgotten in a vending machine, tucked into a tobacco tin, ignored for decades, and then, through sheer luck and timing, rediscovered and recognized for what it truly was. A forgotten artifact that bridged departments, decades, and destinies. A testament to how even the smallest objects can carry histories heavier than time itself. As for the coin today, it is said to reside in a private collection in Monaco. The buyer, still anonymous, is rumored to be building a museum dedicated to items that represent impossible odds, artifacts lost in time, relics of what could have been, and objects that defy logic. The 1986 D quarter dollar will serve as the centerpiece, not just because of its rarity, but because it is proof that fate can intervene even in the world of cold, stamped metal. And so, the next time you empty your pocket, flip through some change, or jam a few quarters into a vending machine, remember this story. Because who knows? There could be another piece of impossible history waiting in the palm of your hand. Thanks for coming along on this wild journey, and until next time, keep your eyes open, because reality often hides the most incredible tales in the most ordinary places. Next, 1997 $quarter coin, where reality and history blend to reveal the astonishing truths hiding in places you'd least expect. You've heard the legends. You've seen the stories. Coins once worth 25 cents turning out to be life-changing relics. But today, we are taking it a step further. What you're about to hear is not a simple tale of numismatic value or a rare minting error. No, this story is about a single coin that vanished from official records, a 1997 $quarter that would surface decades later in the most unlikely of ways, only to become the centerpiece of international legal battles, whispered government cover-ups, and ultimately, the biggest private coin sale in modern history. The price tag? An unbelievable $327 million. But how did this simple Philadelphia minted quarter, one of over 595 million struck in that year, manage to set the world of numismatics on fire? To understand, we need to go back, farther back than 1997. We need to rewind the clocks to 1995, 2 years before the coin was minted, when a quiet but revolutionary proposal was circulating within the U.S. Mint's Engineering and Research Division. It was known internally only as Project Falcon, a top-secret initiative designed to test a new conductive alloy aimed at digital currency detection, a concept way ahead of its time. The idea was to embed a microconductive layer within select test coins that could be electronically verified for authentication. A digital fingerprint for physical money. It was revolutionary, confidential, and in the minds of many, impossible. By mid-1996, prototypes began to roll off hidden production lines in the Philadelphia Mint. Not meant for circulation, these quarters were experimental, tagged internally with microlaser markings invisible to the naked eye and containing an alloy only traceable through specialized electromagnetic scanning. Only 23 pieces were ever struck, each one catalogued and placed under strict security measures. But as is so often the case with government experiments, not everything went to plan. Somewhere between late 1996 and the spring of 1997, one of those 23 prototype quarters vanished. There was no record of its destruction, no documentation of its reassignment. Security footage from the Mint archives revealed nothing suspicious. For years, the loss remained a whispered anomaly, discussed only in closed-door meetings and behind layers of bureaucracy. It would take 23 years before the missing coin would resurface, and it wouldn't be in a museum, collector's vault, or auction house. It would show up in a pawn shop on the outskirts of Daytona Beach, Florida, tucked into a box of costume jewelry and old belt buckles. The shop was owned by a man named Ronald Jeffries, a retired Air Force technician with a love for American memorabilia. One rainy afternoon in 2020, he purchased several boxes of miscellaneous goods at an estate sale from a recently deceased reclusive engineer named Dr. Caleb Brandt. Brandt's death drew no attention, nor did his possessions. That is, until Jeffries began sorting through the items and found the quarter. First, it didn't appear to be anything special. It was shiny, oddly so. It had the P Mint mark, the year 1997, and the usual Washington portrait. But the weight seemed ever so slightly off. Jeffries, having worked with sensitive calibration tools in the Air Force, immediately sensed the discrepancy. Curious, he placed the coin under a handheld digital scale. It registered a weight 0.07 grams above the official quarter standard. Minuscule to most, but enough to suggest something wasn't normal. Intrigued, he used a jewelry loupe and noticed a subtle shimmer beneath the surface, almost as if something was layered just below the clad exterior. Unsettled and intrigued, he reached out to his friend, a former metallurgy professor at the University of Central Florida, named Alan Mirsky. Mirsky conducted non-invasive surface analysis tests using a scanning electron microscope. What she found left her speechless. The coin contained an internal layer of scandium-infused nickel, an exotic alloy used in aerospace telemetry devices. It was invisible to surface inspection and hadn't been used in domestic coinage. Not ever. There were no patents, no public record of the alloy being authorized for circulation. That's when they contacted a numismatic expert, Dr. Lionel Vance, who had worked previously with the US Treasury and was known for his work uncovering counterfeit currency rings. Vance authenticated the coin immediately, but then froze when he scanned it with a specialized frequency scanner. A low-level digital ping echoed back from the coin, a frequency signal buried deep in the alloy matrix. It was broadcasting a repeating 10-digit code, one that appeared to match the ID protocols used in government encryption keys during the late 90s. Vance pulled back. His voice trembled when he said he believed they had just uncovered a prototype from the legendary but classified Project Falcon.by now. Word of the coin's discovery had started to spread. Quiet collectors with deep pockets began to call. One offered $1 million sight unseen. Another offered a private jet and $3.5 million in untraceable bearer bonds. But Vance, Jeffries, and Mirsky decided they needed to be cautious. They had no idea what they were holding, only that it was valuable and likely dangerous. So they did the only thing they could do. They reached out to a journalist named Graham Holt, a former investigative reporter for the Wall Street Chronicle known for breaking government cover-ups. Holt had sources in the mint. He verified the coin's existence using documents long thought destroyed. The coin had been designated QFP97P1, a test model embedded with a frequency pulse designed to link physical currency to early versions of digital blockchain prototypes. Over a decade before blockchain technology would be publicly introduced, Holt published a story in late 2020 titled "The Coin That Shouldn't Exist." The article caused an immediate uproar. The Treasury Department issued a denial, stating that no such project ever existed. But the article had already gone viral. Independent labs began scouring eBay and other platforms looking for similar frequency pulses in common coins. Nothing turned up. The Daytona Beach coin appeared to be the only known survivor. Within weeks, a private investment group from Zurich offered $25 million for the coin. Then a competing firm in Singapore offered $40 million. Then came the flood. Anonymous buyers, suspected intelligence agencies, and black market collectors all placed bids through encrypted channels. In January 2021, the coin was sold at a closed-door event hosted at a private compound in Abu Dhabi. No cameras. No public disclosures. Just 6 people, all under confidentiality agreements, sitting in a room surrounded by armed security. The winning bid was made by a Hong Kong-based blockchain conglomerate, who reportedly purchased the coin for $327 million. Why would anyone pay that much for a quarter? Because it wasn't just a coin anymore. It was a key. The microfrequency ID encoded inside was later rumored to unlock an early version of a lost cryptocurrency wallet created during the infancy of blockchain technology, with links to a forgotten US intelligence black fund set up during the Y2K panic. Whether the wallet was real or not remains unknown. What's confirmed is that the buyer received not just the coin, but a decrypted series of data packets that had been dormant for over 20 years. The coin had become a vessel of value, of history, of technology. And it started with a minting process that, for decades, no one believed had happened. The aftermath of the sale created waves throughout both numismatic and digital finance communities. A new market was born, one blending physical currency with digital utility. Coin values no longer hinged solely on rarity or historical significance, but on technological integration and hidden potential. The 1997 prototype quarter redefined what a coin could be. As for Ronald Jeffries, he disappeared from the public eye shortly after the sale. Rumors placed him in a private compound in Alaska. Others said he was working as a consultant for defense contractors specializing in low-frequency signal integration. Alan Mirsky returned to academia under a different name. Dr. Lionel Vance founded a new research firm focused on the technological evolution of currency and the coin. To this day, no public images exist of it post-sale. It is rumored to be sealed in a multi-layer containment case inside a temperature-controlled vault somewhere in the Swiss Alps. But no one knows for sure. What's undeniable is that a single 1997 p quarter, worth 25 cents at face value, turned out to be one of the most valuable, mysterious, and technologically advanced coins ever produced in human history. And the most haunting part? Somewhere out there may be more, undiscovered, unknown, waiting in dusty drawers, showboxes, and forgotten piggy banks. So the next time you get a handful of change, take a second look. Because the past has a funny way of revealing itself at the most unexpected moment. And sometimes, the smallest things carry the biggest secrets.